I have a lot to say, but I'll start with the most important point. I used to be a writer. A fantasy novelist who was not well known, but still had a large fan base. Of course not now that I've been reincarnated. I had no idea why I had been reincarnated out of nowhere, but the memory of my death was clear. My heart suddenly throbbed as usual while I was writing a novel, and I soon found myself unable to breathe. I believe it was a heart attack. Since I lived on my own and was independent, no one could help me. Well, it wasn't a shame or anything. In the first place, my family was involved in a car accident shortly after I began university, leaving me alone. In a way, it was a lonely death. What bothered me was the fact that I couldn't finish the work I was working on. My death would be known, but I only felt sorry for the readers. So, as soon as I realized I had been reincarnated, I began to consider writing a new work based on my previous life's memories to alleviate my boredom. Until I realized that this was a world that was frequently referred to as fantasy. What should I do? All I had to do now was fold and live. Fortunately, I was born into a noble family in a world set in the Middle Ages. Although it was a manor in the quiet countryside, it had everything and the cost was hundreds of times less than being born as a commoner. Commoners were commoners because they are low-class citizens who dared not stand up to nobles. Furthermore, I was born as the youngest, rather than the eldest, son in the family, and I was living a leisurely life free of power struggles. Well, and then I returned, and time has passed, and I am now 16 years old. I was reading a thick book on the fin bed. Reading was one of my previous hobbies, so I naturally accepted it here. The issue is... Damn! What exactly does this mean? Each book was a compilation of literary works. Or should I say it was a collection of poems written by poets? Even popular romance novels were difficult to comprehend due to their highly expressive and unreadable content. To put it bluntly, it was like an SAT English test filled with meaningless words. The legendary English test, which even foreigners who speak English as their first language cannot pass. Damn it! That is why it is only read by nobles. I became enraged and threw the book away. My head hurt because I had to solve problems with each sentence I read. Just write in my head. It would be great if you could just write it down so I can imagine it. What's more amusing is that reading was a basic culture among the aristocrats. It's almost as if... Have you read this work? What are your thoughts on this part? I believe it is about this and that. How about Count? I hold a different opinion. I mean, read the book and then have a 100-minute discussion about it. When I asked my parents about it, they explained that it was a test of how deep the culture was. I'm completely speechless. Above all, I heard that nobles were adamant in their assertions, and that fights frequently erupted when opposing viewpoints were not met. Hearing this, I reminded myself that it was also a bountiful year, and I was delighted. Isn't my past life a fantasy to these people? I muttered to myself as I looked down at the battlefield. Monsters, elves, dwarves, beasts, demons, and so on could also be found here. There were various races. The racial characteristics were also distinct from what I was used to, but there were some similarities. Whether elves evolved naturally, dwarves were agile, or beasts resembled animals. The demons, on the other hand, were a little different, and they were rejected and despised by the people of this world as the cursed ones. The demons were descendants of the devil who brought this world to the brink of ruin in the distant past. If you look at this cut, you might think it's a silly story, but the problem stemmed from the demons' distinct racial characteristics. Maybe it's because they inherited the devil's blood, and if they didn't overcome their desire, they completely become a devil. If they become a devil, it is nothing more than a monster that destroys things at random. People who are closely related to demons all met tragic ends as a result of these racial characteristics, and the demons also cursed their own fate and wished to live as humans. Even if they claim to be a high priest or do not transform into a demon, They had strong inherent power and were in the process of establishing their own country, having a large and small impact on those around them. I think I'll come up with something amusing. There are gods in this world and priests who borrow God's power. So, what if we could properly connect the fundamentally opposed demons and priests? I believe it was more enjoyable than I anticipated. What gets deeply embedded in a person's mind is a tragedy. A love that was impossible to realize. A love story between a priest and a demon would draw a lot of attention. And it would be magnificent back to back. For example, you could become a demon to protect someone you care about, or even to stop the other person by giving up your body. In my previous life, my readers referred to me as a professor at Satan University. Oh, it's quite a thing. I needed a book that was easy to read because I only read books like the English test for the SAT. But in this day and age, I'd rather write it down myself than have such a book. There was nothing I could do, so I jumped out of bed and went in search of one. If I write this incorrectly once, I must rewrite it. Because of the times, neither a proper ballpoint pen nor a pencil was invented. As a result, I was forced to use ink and pen, but fortunately, the paper is well developed. After all of the preparations were completed, I pondered how to write the introduction. The language was not an issue. If I typed Korean in my head, it was automatically translated into this world's language, and the grammar was the same as in Korean. First and foremost, the background is simple. It felt a little strange writing a fantasy novel in a fantasy world. Since I'm bored, I am using it as a hobby. If it goes well, it's good. If it doesn't, no need to worry. Because my family was wealthy enough, there was no need to make a living as writers. Okay. I'll do it. With a light heart, I played with the pen. Despite the fact that this was a fantasy world, I felt as if I were writing a regular fantasy novel for the reincarnated me. I'm not going to comment on this. I decided not to think about whether or not to show it to my family in the near future. Even if the setting is the same, I'll have to turn the entire story into fiction. Because, after all, this was a work of fiction. Well. Demons are the devil's descendants. This is an unchangeable truth, and they had been cursed. Even the devil's horns, red eyes as bright as blood, and black manna with a hint of ominousness. Each one resembles a devil, and if they lose their reason, they would transform into a true devil, which is why people avoided them. As a result, even if they formed a country, other countries refused to recognize it, and if it hadn't been for ridiculous power, they would have dealt with it sooner. Even the demons had silently accepted this heinous discrimination, but they were striving to live as humans. However, when these efforts were futile, when there was a lull, the demonized demons caused damage, so their hopes were naive. Until a book appeared in the world. A novelist who established a new paradigm. What is his name? A hero epic that will be remembered for a long time. It does, however, contain tragedy and sorrow. Powerful expression and readability that can be imagined in the head. An easy-to-read book for people of all ages. Zenon's biography. It was an unannounced novel that was published one day. I thought it was just a literary novel at first, but after a rumor that a nobleman read it all day and night, it spread. The overall plot revolved around the great devil who brought the world to the brink of ruin in the past, a group attempting to resurrect the demon, and a hero who stops it. On the surface, it appeared to be a typical hero's epic, but the fact that it had a strong connection to the demons drew attention. A book about the sad fate and loneliness of demons. As a half-human, half-demon creature, it expresses the hopes of demons who live alone and are rejected by both sides. Following the sin of Saccharin, which touched many readers' hearts. He sacrificed himself as a human, not a demon. Following the one demon's sacrifice, the only story in the newspaper was about that. It was so moving that even people who didn't usually cry said they did after reading this part. Above all, this was a story that made even those who despised demons cry out in sorrow and regret. injustice and discrimination against demons. Is it genuinely moving? Those who wish to live as humans rather than demons. We turn them into demons. What's more surprising was that people's attitudes toward demons had shifted dramatically. Most people initially treated demons as devils, but that changed after Zenon's biography was published. From a ticking time bomb with no idea when it would detonate to a despondent race yearning to be human. They are not demons, but rather beings who have been doomed since birth. Because of this incredible transformation, the country of demons, Helium, expressed its appreciation for the Zenon's biography. I'm not sure who it is, but please accept my heartfelt gratitude. This person understands the demon's tragic fate better than anyone else. Sincerity is defined as the desire to serve someone while overcoming their desires. All demons learn moderation from this single sentence. The king of Helium, known throughout the world as the Demon King, also expressed his gratitude to the author of the book. As the story progressed, the writer who was breaking millions of people's hearts was now. This is what's happening. Reading the newspaper made me sick. I still have some time left to finish. How should I proceed?